Welcome, focus on real estate salone.
So we have no market data in terms of the price of property as well as
Hello and welcome to the second edition of the Focus on Real Estate Salone show. This is an exclusive show that is brought to you by Global Salone Property and Investment Company Limited to educate you on laws, regulations, and procedures on buying, selling, renting, and leasing all types of properties, as well as the government's process of allocation of state lands in Sierra Leone. This show will be hosting different guests who are experts to share their experiences and knowledge on issues related to the real estate industry, both local, regional, and globally. In today's series, we will be dealing with the term valuation in the context of real estate. As we all know that the term valuation has a different understanding depending on the context in which it is being used. Thus, we shall be critically looking at it as it is a very broad topic of discussion inside the real estate industry. To ensure that our viewers get a general understanding of this topic, we shall be looking at its meanings and its importance in the real estate industry. For this interesting discussion, we have with us a very special guest who is no less a person but Mr. Arthur S.C. Johnson. Mr. Johnson is a real estate consultant and the managing director at Sonaco Homes with over 15 years of experience in the real estate industry. Hello and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Khadija, for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay. So as I made mention earlier, we will be looking at the term valuation in the context of real estate. And you can agree with me that this term is often used by more people, and most people do not understand the actual meaning of valuation in the context of real estate. So Mr. Johnson, can you please explain to us the meaning of the term valuation?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think perhaps the best way to explain it is to look at a common sense definition of value. Okay. Everybody has some sense of what value is. We have subjective definition of valuation. For instance, the lovely watch you've got in your hand, you might say it's worth 20 million. I might say it's worth 10 million. The camera, the furniture in the studio, everybody can come in and assign a value of these assets based on subjectivity, that is something in the mind. But on the other hand, there are guiding principles which will enable us to arrive at the value of an asset. Right? All of these are assets. The difference between real estate and assets like vehicles, watches, etc. is real estate, if it is properly maintained, it appreciates in value. Whereas these items are what we call wasting assets. They depreciate over time. Now, in the context of real estate, the valuation is simply the best estimate of a property based on guiding principles, the location, right? We have what's called the current replacement cost of the building, the state of repair or disrepair. These are all the factors that go to make the value of a building. Now, the value of a building. But when we talk about valuation, we talk about the value of a property, right? So for instance, if you roll back 100 years, and we're in Shaka Stevens Street, when there's no building, there's just empty plots of land. then every plot of land, and most of these plots on Shaka Stephen Street are one-town lots, which is 75 feet by 50 feet. They should be the same value. The one by Bathurst Street should not have a different value from the one by Liverpool Street. They should all be the same value. So when we talk about valuation of real estate, it is the best estimate using certain principles, using certain methodologies to arrive at the valuation of a property.
Okay, I think that's laudable, and it's very interesting to know that valuation actually means the valued estimates given to a particular property and all of that. So
if I could just add that valuation is different from price. That is a different matter altogether. People tend to confuse the two. The valuation is a guide to the price. Yes.
Okay, so in other words, in order for an individual to lay a particular price for a property, then the process of valuation needs to come in, right? Okay, so basically, that brings me to my next question, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah.
What's the importance of valuation to the people? Because people would like to know, of what use is valuation to me?
Right. In the real estate context?
Yes.
Well, we live in a country where the rule of law obtains. It's not the law of the jungle. So I should not get up tomorrow and say the value of this building is $100,000, and then you come tomorrow and say, no, Mr. Johnson, it's $150,000. So the essence of valuation is to utilize the guiding principles to arrive at the best estimates, and that is documented. So in other countries, because in Sierra Leone we're still evolving, in other countries you have valuation standards. You have valuation, like for instance, I've just returned from a real estate conference in Ghana, hosted by the Ghanaian Real Estate Professionals Association. In Ghana, they have a valuation institute where you actually take exams to become a professional valuer. Here, we value by experience, and I'd like to be able to draw from that experience in Ghana so that they can come and set up a professional institute here where we will train young people, because you have to think of the future, young people to be able to value properties. So the importance to you is you have a figure for a property based on guidelines, established guidelines, which will guide you to prevent you from maybe paying more for the property than it is worth.
Okay, so that being said, this brings me to my next question, because like you stated earlier, valuation is basically a guide to that is being given to someone that wants to know the value or the worth of a property. So in that light, and you've already stated the importance, and I believe that valuation, the process of valuation is very much important in terms of looking out for a property and all of that. So what are some of the possible challenges that one might undergo if they fail to involve the process of valuation in terms of looking out for a property and all of that?
Well, as I said before, you run the risk of overpaying for the property. Like for instance, us at Sonaco Homes, we have zoned the entire western area from zone 1 to zone 7. I'll just run through it very quickly. Zone 1, the properties in zone 1 locations are the most desirable properties where people want to live. Spur Road, where the embassies are, Spur Loop, Wilkinson Road and its environs, parts of Signal Hill. Those are your zone 1 properties. The amenities there are generally much better. Water, electricity, access roads. Zone 2 is your hill station. Why is hill station as in zone 1? Hill station has a perennial problem of no water. And one of the essential ingredients to live in a property is the availability of water. Regent, Juba, Babadori, Leicester. This is zone 2. and it overlaps into Zone 3. Zone 4 is from Brookfields to Upcombe. And then you have unique situations where you have the Central Business District. Zone 5 is from Adonkia to Bobo, yes, down the peninsula. Zone 6 is from Upgon to Waterloo. And Zone 7 is where the jewel is. The last unspoiled section of the Western area is from number 2 to Kent. You know, you have Tokyo where you have the white sandy beaches. So when we're doing our valuations, right, we use that zoning to determine whether the value of a property. So for instance, a property on Spur Road, same design. Mm-hmm. You know, you can have a property at Waterloo, same design, tiled, nice, but it won't carry the same value because people desire to live more on Spur Road, you will agree with me, and to live access to the city and all that sort of thing. So this is what informs our valuation. So we try and get you the best estimate. Now we're not always correct because you're entitled. If I do a valuation, you're entitled to challenge. Say, Mr. Johnson, I'm not good. If you say, you will come up small. I say, well, I am signing the certificate, so I have to go and defend what I have signed off on. So the valuation guides you so you do not overpay. The other use for valuation is the banks. You want money from the bank, you leave the property with the bank as collateral. Let's say the property is $100,000. The bank will never give you the full value. They will give you a discounted value as an overdraft or as a loan. When parents pass away, then the estate has to be administered. The court asks for evaluation so that you can use that to pay the government tax. So there are many, many uses for valuation. And you must have a situation where there must be some documentation regulation. Otherwise, it's the law of the jungle and it's chaos.
Yeah, exactly. So this, like you emphasizing on the importance and the use for valuation.
Yeah.
And so, like, what are some of these challenges? If I fail, for example, let's say I'm in a situation where I want to buy a particular property and I fail to do valuation or go through the process of valuation before buying this property. What are some of the possible challenges that I will face as an individual?
Right. One big challenge is in other countries there's a database where you can go and take references, right, about past sales. And that's very important because one valuation methodology is sales comparison. If, for instance, this building is up for sale, there's a similar building down the road. You should be able to, that has been sold, that was recently sold, last 6 months, you should be able to go to a database and say, well, similar size, 10,000 square feet building was sold down Godrich Street for X amount. Right? So that is one big challenge. There is no standardization. As I said before, you shouldn't walk down Chaka Stevens Street, the same plot of land, and people are asking different prices. It's absurd. You understand? So one of the challenges is, as I said, lack of standards. The other challenge is lack of information, because when you're doing evaluation, you have to draw a reference. You must have some history to be able to say, yes, this was done, and therefore similar comparison, so therefore this is the value.
So this is really, really interesting, and I'm also falling in love with the topic more based on the way you've been responding to it.
Sure.
So Mr. Johnson, I'll have to hold you there for now. It's now time for us to go for a short commercial break, and when we return, we are going to look at this topic in depth. Did you know 45% of Sierra Leoneans are not buying land simply because of price, and the others say it's because of fraud, the lengthy process involved, and payment terms? Well, It's for this reason Global Salone Property and Investment Company Limited, the leading real estate broker in the country, is bringing you a special promotion. For the first time in Sierra Leone, you can buy a conflict-free property and pay in 12-month payments planned from January 2022 to December 2022. So, what are you waiting for? Grab this opportunity now. Buy 2 town lots and above at Gloucester Saddle in just 3 steps. View the property and select the service package. Make a down payment and the land is surveyed in your name. Finish your payment in 12 months and receive a signed conveyance. You can't believe it. This price includes the value of the land, surveying, documentation, registration and brokerage service fee. At Global Salone, price is what you pay and value is what you get. Mind you, this offer is based on a first come, first served basis. Global Salone, experience the difference. Welcome back from our commercial break. We still have with us Mr. Arthur Johnson, a real estate consultant and the managing director at Sonaco Homes. Mr. Johnson, having been in the real estate industry for far too long now, I would like you to tell us what are some of the steps involved in evaluating a property, and also how can someone get in touch with a valuator in Sierra Leone? Where can we find these kinds of people?
Right. First of all, the steps in undertaking a valuation exercise. You must have the permission of the bona fide owner of the property.
Okay.
Right. Once that is established, there's certain documentation that you should request. And the fundamental one is the land survey plan, which tells you the acreage on which the building stands. Once you have what we call unfettered access, because sometimes you go to a valuation and some rooms are closed, because even though you tell the client, make sure everywhere is open, so you must have unfettered access to the building.
Okay.
Everywhere. You go in and take measurements. We at Sonaco nowadays, we use laser tapes to measure. We don't go and stoop down and start throwing the tape here and there. We use laser. We just point it on the wall, length, width, and it gives you the area. Right. So the valuation, this method is called the current replacement cost method. So it comprises the land, the value of the land, which our zonal tables assist us in determining. We keep up with trends. The value of the building space is 10,000 square feet, but you assign US dollar factors. So, for example, if it's a residence, to the living room, the dining room, the bathroom, the corridor, the steps, right? For instance, the living room will command a higher dollar factor than a store, because you spend more time in the living room and more money would have been spent on the materials. So the building space using dollar factor, the land and the fence. You put those 3 figures together, you get the open market valuation of the property. Another method is the sales comparison method, right? The rental value of a building is linked to its market value as well, so that's another methodology. If you want, you can add all those 3 different types of methods together, take the average, and you arrive at what is called the fair value of the property. So that is your guide now with whatever you want to do with the property. Sometimes people value properties because they want to share the estate. This is for this sister, that brother, etc., etc. So that is generally the method that we use to value properties.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the second part?
The second part is how can one get in touch with values?
Well, different firms, right, have different methods of advertising. I mean, some have websites, some are quite known in the industry.
Okay.
But like any service, the best way to acquire that service is to get a reference. So, do you know someone who can value my property for me? And it makes sense to get 3 quotations in any procurement endeavor. Get 3 quotations, try and get references about the particular firm. I think that would be the best approach.
Okay, so in other words, you're telling me that one needs to involve a professional in doing these kinds of things, right?
Of course.
Yes. So this brings me to my next question, Mr. Johnson. This is a personal one actually, because we know we have a lot of people out there who are watching us currently, and a lot of people might tend to dodge the fact that they do not want to involve professional, considering the money. Let's say, for example, the money, or maybe the protocols involved in involving a professional. So now, what's your personal advice to these sets of people who are taking the risk of not involving a professional in this process?
Well, I think the first and biggest risk is you stand the chance of being duped. Right. A good professional, ethical professional, will guide you with respect to the principles of undertaking evaluation. The second risk is, as I stated before, you might end up overpaying, because the seller might just wake up in the morning and say to themselves, well, my house is worth X thousands of dollars, and if you're determined, I really want this property, you might overpay for the property. So I think engaging the services of a valuer, a credible valuer, will enable you to make cost savings when you're acquiring the property.
Okay, so this is really, really interesting and all of that, Mr. Johnson. So considering the time, this topic is actually a very huge and something that we need to go in depth to ensure that we give our viewers more information that they need to know about this valuation process. So, but that being said, everything that you stated here, I believe that if one look this program, they will get a guide on how to do this entire valuation process, and they will know what are the do's and don'ts in doing a valuation process. So even if they want to be in a position where someone might want to dupe them, they will have a guide. So thank you so much, Mr. Johnson.
Can I just say one quick thing before?
Sure.
In the industry now, we are finalizing documentation to set up the Sierra Leone Real Estate Professionals Association, SLAREP. And once that organization is registered and we go for legislation, then the public will be better advised with respect to their real estate acquisitions and their valuations. So stay tuned.
Wow, I think that's a huge one, and it's gonna be really interesting, because I tell you, Mr. Johnson, we've been in a situation wherein we've had several situations where people have been put in a funny position or being duped in the process of buying a property, because people have limited understanding on how these kinds of things go. They just believe that when someone come up to them and say, this is my property, or I have connection with the owner of this property, they will just trust the individual. So having that kind of idea put in place to guide Sierra Leoneans to know when and how to go in for properties and what are the pros and cons and all of that, I believe it's going to be massive, and we are waiting to receive that from you. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson, for making it a point of duty to be here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. This is how we have successfully come to the end of the second edition of the Focus on Real Estate Salone show, and we hope you have benefited a lot from this episode. If you have comments, questions and recommendations, please send them on WhatsApp on the number showing on the screen. We promise to read and answer questions in the next edition. Thus, kindly join us next week for another fresh edition. Follow us on all our social media platforms, especially on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. And also at FTN Television every Wednesday, 7 to 8 p.m. I have been your amazing host, Mrs. Khadija Tubai.